In a chance encounter at a luxury restaurant, a waitress comes face to face with Hugh Jackman, the father who never knew she existed. Through a series of revelations, they uncover the truth. Her mother sacrificed her own happiness to protect them from a dangerous reality. As hidden letters and preserved memories come to light, father and daughter must decide if understanding the past can build a bridge to the future. The silence of the luxurious Le Petit restaurant was shattered by the sharp sound of a wine glass breaking against a marble floor. Sophia stood frozen, her eyes locked on a man in an Italian suit who had just stepped through the grand entrance. Time seemed to stand still in that moment, as shards of crystal and scattered memories lay at her feet. "Sophia, what happened?" whispered Emma, her co-worker, rushing over with a broom, but Sophia barely heard her. Her world had shrunk to a single focal point, the face of the man her mother had kept in an old, yellowed photograph, hidden inside a dusty book. William Thompson, now with silver strands at his temples and deeper lines around his eyes, but still wearing the same confident smile that had once enchanted her mother 2 decades ago. For months, Sophia had rehearsed this moment in her mind. She had planned every word, every gesture, imagining the day she would finally meet the man who had abandoned her mother while she was pregnant, leaving behind nothing but a hastily written note and an emptiness that no amount of time could fill. And now, dressed in her waitress uniform, she wondered if fate had a peculiar sense of irony. VIP section, table 15, announced a maitre d', leading William and his business associates to the most exclusive part of the restaurant. Sophia felt her heart race as she realized that was her section. With trembling hands, she began picking up the shards of glass, each fragment reflecting a different piece of her fractured story. A story her mother, Clara, had protected so carefully, revealing the truth only on her deathbed 6 months ago. "He deserves to know," Clara had whispered, her final words heavy with a burden that Sophia now carried alone. It was 8:43 p.m. when Sophia finally approached table 15, her notepad in hand, her professional mask firmly in place. William was deep in conversation about mergers and acquisitions, his expensive cologne blending with the aroma of gourmet dishes being served around them. "Good evening, gentlemen. May I introduce our wine list?" William glanced up, barely acknowledging her before returning to his discussion about millions and corporate strategies. But Sophia noticed something in his expression, a brief, almost imperceptible flicker of recognition. Maybe it was her eyes, so much like Clara's in her youth. Or maybe it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. "A Chateau Margaux 2015, please," he requested, not truly looking at her. Sophia nodded mechanically, her nails digging into her palm. In her mind, thousands of unanswered questions exploded. Years of absence, empty birthdays, shattered dreams. Every step toward the wine cellar was a battle between her professional duty and the silent scream threatening to escape her throat. When she returned with the bottle, her decision had already been made. Tonight would not be just another shift at Le Petit. Tonight, long-buried truths would come to light. The past and the present would collide with the force of 2 decades of silence. Sophia poured the wine with the precision of someone who knew her craft, and with every drop that fell into the crystal glass, her resolve solidified. The moment she had long awaited had arrived, and there was no turning back. The night unfolded at Le Petit, and every time Sophia approached William's table, fragments of memories surfaced like old photographs scattered across the table. She remembered the shoebox she had found in her mother's apartment days after her passing. Inside, along with the yellow photograph, were unsent letters, saved notes, and a diary worn by time. Clara had documented everything. Their first meeting at a downtown cafe, the whispered promises under moonlight, the dreams of a life together, and then the moment everything changed, the unexpected pregnancy, the fear in his eyes, the last conversation that ended with a slammed door and the sound of footsteps fading away forever. "More wine, sir?" Sophia asked, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. William absent-mindedly lifted his glass, still focused on his discussion of markets and investments. Actually, he paused, finally looking at her more intently. You remind me of someone. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Now, she could see the resemblance between them. The same shape of their eyes, the slight tilt of the head when speaking, gestures that were like a distant mirror of time. Perhaps from another life, she replied, allowing a hint of bitterness to seep into her words. In the kitchen, amid orders and elaborate dishes, Sophia carefully unfolded the photograph she always carried with her. William and Clara smiled, young and in love, standing in front of an old cafe. On the back, in her mother's delicate handwriting, love should be eternal, but sometimes it only lasts a moment. Emma, who had become more than just a co-worker over the years, noticed Sophia's restlessness. You're shaking, she whispered, placing a hand on her shoulder. Do you want to take the table? Sophia shook her head. Some things we have to face alone, she replied, tucking the photo away and adjusting her uniform. Back at William's table, she observed how he interacted with his business partners. There was an unwavering confidence, a presence that commanded respect. The same charm that had won over her mother was still there, but now Sophia could see beyond the polished surface. The tiny cracks in his massive success, the loneliness disguised as self-sufficiency. At one point, William dropped his phone. As he bent down to pick it up, his eyes met Sophia's. For a moment, time slowed. She saw the exact second recognition began to form on his face. Those eyes, so much like Clara's, now staring back at him with a haunting familiarity. You, he started, but was interrupted by one of his associates with an urgent contract question. Sophia stepped back, gripping the tray so tightly that her knuckles turned white. In her mind, her mother's last words gained a new meaning. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting my love. It's about setting yourself free. The night wore on, and with it grew the certainty that this meeting was no coincidence. Between plates served and glasses refilled, Sophia built up her courage. Every time she passed the table, she felt the weight of the unspoken words, of the 2 decades of repressed truths, of the hugs that had never happened. Then, the moment that changed everything came when William asked for the check. The moment that changed everything came when William asked for the check. Sophia approached with a small silver tray, her heart pounding against her ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. And that's when she saw it next to the black credit card. There was an old photograph, the same one she carried in her pocket, only as was in better condition. The colors still vibrant. Excuse me, William said, his voice trembling slightly as he quickly retrieved the photo. It must have fallen from my wallet. Sophia remained motionless, gripping the tray so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Clara, she whispered, almost unconsciously, you kept her picture all these years. The sound of that name made William freeze. His eyes, previously distant, now locked onto Sophia with an intensity that made the air between them feel dense, heavy with 2 decades of unspoken secrets. How do you... He began, but his voice faltered when he finally really saw, her face. The same eyes as Clara, the same determination, the same pain. The other executives at the table watched the scene with growing curiosity. William abruptly stood, tossing a few bills onto the table. Gentlemen, excuse me for a moment, he murmured, gesturing for Sophia to follow him to a quieter corner of the restaurant. In the small corridor leading to the wine cellar, William leaned against the exposed brick wall, his usually composed expression now fractured with emotion. How long? He asked, his voice low and hoarse. 23 years, Sophia answered, each word carrying the weight of countless lonely dinners, graduations without a father, and unanswered questions. Mom passed away 6 months ago. William's face turned pale. His hands, so steady when holding expensive wine glasses or signing million-dollar contracts, were visibly trembling. Clara, He ran a hand through his graying hair, a gesture that betrayed his usual composure. I didn't know that she had died. Sophia finished for him, her voice sharp as shattered glass. Or that she chose to have me even after you left? The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the distant clinking of silverware and laughter from the main dining hall. William pulled the photograph from his wall again, his fingers gently tracing the worn edges. "I tried to come back," he admitted finally, his words escaping like a painful confession. 6 months later. But the apartment was empty. No one knew where Clara had gone. Something inside Sophia cracked, not with anger, but with a deep, matured sadness. She moved to the countryside, she explained, her voice softer now. She said she needed a fresh start. She wanted to protect us. Protect us? William repeated, the word us sitting heavily on his tongue, as if he were tasting its meaning for the first time. She never told me the full truth about why you left, Sophia continued, pulling her own copy of the photograph from her uniform pocket. She only said that sometimes love isn't enough. William looked at the two identical photographs side by side, mirrored images of a moment frozen in time, when the future was still a blank page full of possibilities. Love wasn't the problem, he murmured, more to himself than to Sophia. It was fear. I was 22, just starting my career, full of dreams too big to handle. And I was one of those dreams that were too big for you? Sophia asked, her voice trembling but firm. Before William could answer, Emma appeared in the hallway. Sophia, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman at the front desk asking for you. She says it's urgent. The world seemed to slow as Sophia recognized the figure who had just entered the restaurant. Margaret, her mother's best friend, and in her arms, an old wooden box that Sophia knew all too well. The box where Clara had kept her most precious memories. Margaret walked across the restaurant with determined steps, clutching the wooden box to her chest as if carrying a treasure. Her eyes, framed by wrinkles of concern, flickered between Sophia and William, and a spark of recognition crossed her face. So it's true, she murmured, her voice heavy with the weight of 2 decades of secrets shared with Clara. You really are here. Sophia felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. The wooden box in Margaret's hands held more than just memories. It held truths that her mother had protected until her last breath. Tia Margaret, why did you bring this here? Sophia asked, her voice low and tense. Because your mother made me promise, Margaret replied, her fingers running over the lid of the box. She said, if Sophia ever finds William, give this to them. Together. William took a hesitant step forward, his face a mixture of emotions he couldn't quite name. What's in the box? He asked. The truth, Margaret said simply. All of it. Sophia led them to a secluded table in the restaurant's winter garden, where the soft glow of lanterns cast dancing shadows on the glass walls. Emma, sensing the gravity of the moment, made sure no one disturbed them. With trembling hands, Sophia opened the box. The first thing she found was a yellowed envelope, addressed to William in her mother's delicate handwriting. The date on it was just 3 months ago. She wrote this before. Sophia couldn't finish the sentence as she handed the envelope to William. As he read, the color drained from his face. She knew, he whispered, his voice barely escaping his throat. Clara knew I had come back to look for her. Margaret nodded slowly. She always knew, just like she knew you left flowers on your parents' grave every year, even after she moved away. Sophia felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. What? Your mother never stopped loving William, Margaret continued, her voice gentle but firm. But she had her reasons for keeping her distance, reasons that go beyond what either of you imagined. Inside the box, Sophia found more letters, old newspaper clippings, and a journal she had never seen before. The pages revealed a story far more complex than she had ever imagined, a tale of love, fear, and sacrifice that extended beyond the abandonment she had always believed in. Your grandfather, Margaret said, turned to Sophia, Clara's father was a dangerous man. When he found out about the pregnancy, he made threats, not just against William, but against his entire family. William let the letter fall onto the table, his face marked by an old and renewed pain. She never told me, because she knew you would fight, Margaret replied. And back then, fighting would have meant losing everything. Clara chose to protect all of you, even if it meant raising Sophia alone. Sophia picked up a photograph at the bottom of the box, her mother, young and radiant, holding a baby. On the back, written with love, "For William, the father who will never meet our daughter, but whom I carry in my heart. May she one day understand that sometimes love is shown to the hardest choices." The silence that followed was filled only with the distant sounds of the city outside and the weight of long-guarded truths finally coming to light. In the winter garden of Le Petit, time seemed to pause as Sophia flipped through her mother's journal, each page revealing another layer of a story she had never truly known. Her hands trembled as she found a particular entry, dated just weeks before Clara passed. "My dear Sophia," she read aloud, her mother's words coming to life in the cool night air. "There are truths we carry like precious stones, heavy, yet too valuable to abandon. William didn't leave because he didn't love us. He left because I asked him to." William, seated across from her, let out a strangled sound. His tear-filled eyes locked onto Sophia's with a mix of pain and realization. "Your grandfather," Margaret continued softly, "discovered the pregnancy before William even knew about it. He was a man with dangerous connections, and he made terrible threats. Clara knew that if William stayed, his life would be in danger, so she staged a farewell, a merciful lie to protect you both." Sophia reached into the box and pulled out more photographs, images her mother had never shown her. William, young and determined, protesting in front of her grandparents' house. Clara, visibly pregnant, watching from a distance as he searched for her in the old neighborhood. William began, his voice breaking. "Clara told me she didn't want to see me again, that she needed to move on without me. I thought I was respecting her decision by leaving. And yet," Margaret added, "you never really left, did you? The flowers at the cemetery, the anonymous donations to the school where Clara taught." Sophia felt her world shift beneath her. All the stories she had built in her mind, all the nights she had imagined a heartless, absent father, now crumbled beneath the weight of a truth far more complicated and far more painful. "There's more," Margaret said, pulling out a sealed envelope from the bottom of the box. "Clara made me promise to give you this only when you were together." Inside the envelope, there was a letter, an old key. Clara's handwriting, once so firm, now showed signs of weakness. Her final words written from the hospital. "My daughter and William," Sophia read, her voice trembling. "If you are reading this together, it means the time for the whole truth has come. This key belongs to our old apartment. I kept it all these years, secretly paying the rent. Inside, you'll find everything I never had the chance to say." William held the key as if it were made of glass. "Apartment 302, he murmured, "the place where it all began." Sophia looked at the man before her, not the villain of her abandonment story, but victim of circumstances as cruel as her own. In his eyes, she saw reflections of her own pain, her own search for answers. "All these years," she whispered, "Mom carried the secret alone, protecting all of us, sacrificing her own happiness." Margaret gently squeezed Sophia's hand. "Your mother used to say that true love sometimes means letting go, but she never said it had to be forever." The silence that followed was filled with the weight of 23 years of interrupted love, of silent sacrifices, of a hope that, even now, was beginning to bloom among the ruins of the past. The apartment at 302 remained frozen in time, like a capsule holding fragments of a love interrupted. Sophia turned the key in the rusted lock, while William stood beside her, both breathing in the heavy air of memories preserved for 2 decades. Moonlight filtered through the dusty windows, revealing furniture covered in white sheets, silent ghosts of a life that could have been. On the living room wall, a collage of photographs remained intact, a story of Clara and William told in images faded by time. She kept everything, Sophia whispered, running her fingers over a picture where her mother, young and radiant, smiled beside William in a park. Every moment, William stepped toward an old wooden desk, where an envelope with his name rested, as if Clara had known exactly where he would look. His hands trembled as he unfolded the aged paper. "My love," he read aloud, his voice thick with emotion. "If you are reading this, it means our daughter has finally found you. Forgive me for keeping so many secrets. Every decision I made was driven by a love greater than my own heart." Sophia spotted a small music box on top of a covered piano. She opened it, and a soft melody filled the air, the same lullaby her mother used to hum to her at night. "This song," William murmured, "was our first dance. Mom used to play it for me every night," Sophia replied, feeling warm tears slide down her cheeks. She said it was a song about true love. William continued reading the letter, his voice growing stronger with every word. "I kept this place intact because it represents everything we dreamed of together. Every object here tells our story, not just of what was, but of what could have been. Sophia grew up without you, William, but never without your love. In every photograph I saved, in every story I told, I kept alive the truth of the wonderful man you are." Sophia opened a drawer in the desk, finding dozens of newspaper clippings. They were articles about William's business successes, carefully preserved by Clara over the years. Among them, hidden photographs of school graduations and childhood milestones, moments where William had been present without her knowing. "You were there," Sophia realized, her voice barely above a whisper. "All this time." "In the front row," William admitted, tears freely streaming down his face. "Your mother sent me the dates through Margaret. I never missed a single important moment, even if you never saw me." At the center of the room, a table was set for three, still covered in a white cloth, as if Clara had prepared for this moment long before she passed. On top of it, one last envelope addressed to both of them. "My greatest joys," Clara's final letter read. "The time that was stolen from us cannot be reclaimed, but the future is still in your hands. The love that united us never died, only transformed. Now, it is up to you to decide how this story continues." Sophia and William met in the middle of the room, united by shared pain and the possibility of healing that Clara had so carefully orchestrated. In the silence of apartment 302, between preserved memories and revealed truths, father and daughter began to build a bridge over the 23-year chasm that had once separated them. 1 year had passed since that night at apartment 302. Lou Petit, the setting of their first reunion, now witnessed another moment between father and daughter. Sophia no longer served tables. She had followed her dream of opening her own cafe, a cozy space where every cup of coffee told a story of connection. William sat at his usual table, no longer surrounded by executives talking business, but waiting for his daughter for their weekly coffee ritual. His eyes scanned the restaurant, remembering how a simple business dinner had turned into the moment that changed his life forever. Still trying to process everything? Sophia asked, sitting across from him with 2 cups of coffee prepared exactly as Clara used to make. "Every day, I learn something new about you that reminds me of her," William replied, his smile carrying both joy and melancholy. On the wall of her cafe, Sophia had created a photo collage, not just the old ones that told her parents' love story, but new images documenting her journey of reconnection with William. Simple moments, walks in the park, breakfast conversations, laughter shared over past stories. "Clara always said time has its own way of healing things," Margaret commented, approaching the table with a small package in her hands. Inside, an album of newly arranged photographs. One side filled with Sophia's childhood, the other, their new memories together. "Your mother built bridges over the distance that separated us," William said softly, "even when we couldn't see them. And as the afternoon light bathed them in golden hues, they raised their cups. To Clara," William said. "To Mom," Sophia whispered. And in an old photograph on the wall, Clara's smile seemed brighter, Her final act of love now complete,